What's up? What's up? Welcome to In the Lab with Hoopsology. I am your host, Matt Thomas. Flying solo tonight. Justin, want to give a shout out to him. He's been recording a lot of incredible solo interviews this week. We've kind of had a lot of things on each other's schedule and have been apart this week, cranking out a bunch of content that hopefully you are enjoying. Make sure you check out our most recent interview talking about Caitlin Clark with Rachel Bachman from Wall Street Journal. Appreciate her joining the show. Make sure you check out our other most recent interview with Brian Tong talking about technology in the basketball world. All those are available on our podcast feed and our YouTube channel. Wanted to also say thank you for all the recent support we've been seeing. Subscribers and followers continue to rise. Thank you guys so much for supporting the show and getting in on the conversation. This week and this episode of In the Lab, we're doing one of my favorite things, which is previewing the playoffs, the most relevant basketball that we get to see every single year. So excited to do that. I have Justin's picks in and some of his comments that I'll be reacting to, along with giving you my own thoughts for each series. We're just going to kind of do lightning round style for each series. But before we get into that, let's talk about the play-in tournament, because I think what you see this year, I'm not an absolutist either way with the play-in tournament, but what you see this year is a good application on one end of the play-in tournament and a bad application on the other. What do I mean by that? Well, in my opinion, it's unreasonable to give teams with losing records a shot at the playoffs. It's a little silly to have only 10 teams miss the playoffs each year, which is the state of things with the play-in tournament. I know it boosts ratings in the short term, and I will mention the good that it can drive interest, and there can be some merit with the play-in tournament. I think if you look, though, for example, at the Eastern Conference, where the Bulls are 39-43, it's looking like they are going to bounce the Heat from the playoffs when the Heat have a much better record, sitting at over 500, I believe, 43-39, kind of the inverse of the Bulls record. You then go further down the list, Bulls in 9th place, the Hawks being in 10th place. They've already been eliminated, as you likely know, but they have an even worse record, even further below 500. So I think in the Eastern Conference, when you have only 8 teams with a winning record, those 8 should just automatically go into the playoffs. And sure, you can disagree with me, but then let's take a look at the Western Conference, where you have even the 11th place Houston Rockets had a 500 record. They broke even 41-41. This is a case where I think all 10 of those teams should be given a play-in tournament and should be given a shot at postseason play, which is what we got. And I do like that, because you have more winners and not a huge discrepancy in records. So you have legitimate teams that can play basketball that have demonstrated that through the long regular season. So give me the play-in tournament, keep it there for the way it has shaken out in the West. Then you can maybe get the hottest of these winning teams into postseason play. So I like that. So give me your thoughts on the play-in tournament. I know most people are probably against what I'm saying and just doesn't matter. They want it across the board because these single elimination games are exciting. But to me, it feels like another mechanism that kind of cheapens the regular season. But let's move forward and get into our actual playoff predictions, a little preview of the playoffs, each series, going down the list, giving you my thoughts. Of course, be sure you react in the comments where you think Justin and I are right, where you think we're wrong. We're going to start in the Eastern Conference, and I'm sorry, this year we can call it again the Leastern Conference, back into that trend with everything that has transpired and that has gone down on the court. We're going to go in descending order. So we're going to start from the top and go down, starting with our 1 seed Boston Celtics versus whoever wins tomorrow night at the time of this recording, the Bulls versus the broken Miami Heat. Jimmy Butler, unfortunately, out with an injury, which, by the way, he may not have sustained if we didn't have this extra play-in game. Now, woulda, coulda, shoulda, I know, but there is a case to be had there. Regardless, I love Boston in this first round, and I also think Boston is going to come in really hungry to prove themselves and that this regular season was not a fluke, that they're not going to arguably choke like they did last year in the playoffs, although they did advance a bit. Point being, I think they're going to want to show a strong showing. So my pick here is that Boston is going to win in 4, regardless of who they play. I don't think it'll be a disappointment if they finish them off in 5 games, a gentleman's sweep. But anything more than 5 games, I think would be a little bit of a disappointment for Boston. Justin says the Bulls should make it to play Boston. I agree with that, but will lose in the series against Boston in 6 due to Kobe White's hot streak. So he's got Boston in 6. I disagree. I think it's going to be 4 or 5 games, but we're definitely in alignment in terms of the Celtics advancing in the first round. Next on the list, and maybe it is a situation where, I don't know, there's some kind of Knicks curse developing or something like that, but no, maybe not. We're not that far. Regardless, it's a terrible matchup for the Knicks. They get drawn the Joel Embiid, last year's MVP, and a frontrunner this year until he was hurt. They get the 7 seed Philadelphia 76ers and have to deal with an MVP caliber player that does a lot of things well inside and is basically unstoppable on the offensive end of the floor as long as he's healthy. So I think this is a really bad draw for the Knicks. And the Knicks, as you probably know, are also without their co-star, Julius Randle. So I don't really buy this narrative. There have been media members saying that the Knicks are better without Julius Randle. I disagree with that. I think Randle can at times put the Knicks out of games when he's not playing smart, but I don't buy that it's an addition by subtraction kind of thing with him. They need to have another asset for him, which they'll probably try to do in the trade market. Again, this offseason, kick the tires on that. I've got this a hard-fought series, but based on Joel Embiid being present, if he is in this series, I've got Philadelphia in 6. If he gets injured, all bets are off on that. Justin is staying with the Knicks, giving them Knicks in 7, hard-fought series. He's a little more concerned with how Joel Embiid looked in that play-in tournament game against the Heat. And so we'll just have to see how this one plays out. I like having some disagreement in our picks this early on. Next on the list is the 3 seed Milwaukee Bucks, who have been, even though they're still a high seed, a disappointment this season against the 6 seed surprise Indiana Pacers, the offensively loaded Indiana Pacers. I think what we've seen here is that the Pacers beat the Bucks when they were hottest this season. Earlier in the year, you had Halliburton's ascension into nearing household name type of territory. He isn't quite as hot as he was back then. He's kind of trying to refine that groove. The Giannis injury is very concerning, no doubt. And the Bucks were my preseason finals appearance pick. I still picked the Denver Nuggets to repeat, but I'm not sold on the Bucks like I used to be at the start of this season. And Doc Rivers hasn't done anything to inspire more confidence compared to where they were with Coach Griffin before him. But I still give this to the Bucks if Giannis can return and play in this series from that calf injury, which is a big if. I think Indiana has potential to do the upset if Giannis isn't around, but I'm going to go ahead and assume he can come in and pick Milwaukee in 7. If he can't, really, really disappointing. Another year that ends in injury for Giannis. Justin has a little less faith in Giannis's ability to return than I do. and he's not sure that they're going to rush him back. That may be the smart move. We really just don't know. But again, Justin and I have disagreement, which is nice. He's got Indiana in 6 games compared to my Milwaukee in 7. So very interesting how this will shape up. And finally, in the East, we've got Cleveland versus Orlando. A game that I think will be widely ignored by fans and media just because of the markets, unless you are a diehard fan of those teams, of course. When I look at this, I think it's a fairly even matchup between these teams where Orlando lacks in some talent. Oftentimes this season, they have made up with hustle and pure effort and force of will. I like to see that. I like to give the edge to teams like that, but I just can't do that given that Donovan Mitchell right now at this present moment is the biggest star in this series, and he has huge incentive to prove himself and prove his worth. So with Cleveland, it's tough to say because we know how they've done with higher level competition. We know that they have, I think it was right around 500 or maybe even a losing record against winning competition. But I still give it to them in 7 games. Justin has the same pick, agreeing with me, and points out also that Orlando ended their season much more slowly than Cleveland did. Cleveland should have the experience edge here, and they should have the talent edge. So for both Justin and I, give us Cleveland in 7. So to recap, in the Eastern Conference, we've got Boston. I have them in 4. Justin has them in 6 if it's against Chicago. In New York versus Philadelphia, I've got Philadelphia in 6. Justin has Knicks in 7. Milwaukee versus Indiana, I've got Milwaukee in 7. Justin's got Indiana at 6 in 6. And we both have Cleveland in 7. Moving out west, the Western Conference, you might say, if the Eastern Conference is the Eastern Conference, which it is this year, once again, shades of the 2010s, early 2010s anyway. Going top down again, we've got Oklahoma City versus either the Pelicans, who unfortunately now Zion is injured. Feels like there's kind of a curse there. Just really unfortunate luck that he's had with the injuries. So bummer that he can't be around here for the postseason yet again. But the Pelicans will be facing off against the Kings. I think the Kings get by the Pelicans, and give me Shai Gilgeous-Alexander all day for this series. Either way, whoever the opponent is, I'm going to go ahead. I do think there will be growing pains, and Justin agrees with me on that point. And I've got OKC in 6 this first round. Justin has the same pick there. So give us the Thunder. No first round upset in spite of their youth. They've got enough talent to get through there. The Kings, to me, are a little bit scarier compared to the Pelicans in terms of being able to beat the Thunder and upset our picks, because their lack of size won't be as big of a factor against the Thunder, but they don't have the athleticism to match the youth of the Thunder and that piece that can really give trouble to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think he's going to be able to do pretty much anything he wants in this series. Both, fairly deep teams that can mix it up quite a bit, but I think OKC, with what they've shown us this year, I don't think it's a fluke. I'm not picking them over Denver and maybe some of the other heavyweights in the West in spite of their record, but I will pick them through the first round along with Justin. OKC in 6. The 2 seed versus the 7 seed, Denver Nuggets versus the LA Lakers. I will fully admit I have Laker fatigue. I just don't think this team, last year they were swept in the playoffs, and they're a huge focus this year. And I know all the milestones LeBron is setting with his longevity. That's great, but that's not really something that I think makes me favor them any more or less than last year in the playoffs. I think it's impressive that LeBron is still playing and putting up numbers, but at this point in his career, and I think it's been for a few years now, he's not really at the point where he's a title contender. And I know a lot of people don't want to admit that, but I think it is what it is. And you can look at the end of games last year when it really was competitive. You can look at some of the last shots and decisions that were made, not just by LeBron, but I think we're at this point where the Lakers aren't really true title contenders. I don't think that's an outrageous statement. A lot of people will feel that way. And I'm sorry to break it to you, Lakers fans, but I think it's the truth. Denver swept the Lakers last year. This year, I will give the Lakers a gentleman's sweep because it does seem like they have more stability compared to last year, but they're still a 7 seed team. Give me Denver in 5. I'll give the Lakers 1 game, but Denver still dominates this series. Justin gives the Lakers a little more credit, and he respects Davis and LeBron being around more this season, enough to give them 2 games. He's got Denver in 6. Either way, we have the same team advancing, the Denver Nuggets going through the second. Our next matchup, the 3 seed Minnesota Timberwolves versus the 6 seed Phoenix Suns. These are 2 teams that I don't trust either way. I think late game decisions for the Timberwolves, they need to sort that out. But Anthony Edwards has another year of experience under his belt. I love his competitive nature. I love the way the team has been able to grow. And I love that Rudy Gobert hasn't been a bust for the Timberwolves after all, like it seemed like he was last season. The trade was a laughing stock. I'm glad that narrative has been reversed. On the other side, Phoenix, they haven't really, in spite of getting this team together somewhat early on, compared to the rush of last season bringing KD in, this season they've had time together, but they really haven't because players have been injured and out from time to time. They're still doing like a lot of Devin Booker at point guard. Just why don't you guys have a point guard that can run things and let your stars be stars and not have to do those types of things? This team's still very much patched together, which they've done a good job of in under the circumstances and under the time crunch they were in and the available cap space. But at the end of the day, it's kind of which team do you trust more? Do you think Anthony Edwards has the potential to make his rise, or do you think KD and Devin Booker together are going to hold this team down enough? I think the Minnesota Timberwolves are just a better constructed team. I had the itch to pick them higher in preseason predictions, and I chickened out from it, and I regret it. But they proved me wrong from where I predicted them being. I did agree that the Phoenix Suns would be a disappointment. They've been a bigger disappointment than I would have thought. I think this is a huge chance for Anthony Edwards to put himself up there as kind of the king of American basketball if he has a nice playoff run this postseason. And so I think he's going to put his stamp on this series, and I think he can do it. I think defensively, the Suns lack a lot. Minnesota isn't an offensive juggernaut, but they've got guys who can score. They've got guys who can get to the rim, and Phoenix doesn't really have anyone who can stop them from doing any of that. I still think it's going to be a close, contested series just because of the star power that you also have with the Phoenix Suns. Give me Minnesota in 7. Justin respects the Timberwolves even more, or maybe is even less trusting of the Phoenix Suns than I am, and he's got Minnesota in 6. So we're in agreement on that, on who's advancing out of that round as well. The Clippers and the 4 seed versus the Dallas Mavericks in the 5 seed is the last series we need to cover for this first round. And this is a case of 2 more untrustworthy teams, I would say. Dallas has been hot lately, but there are still questions if this Luka and Kyrie mix can get things done. We haven't seen them in the postseason yet. This is our first chance because if you remember, they intentionally tanked at the end of last year to keep a draft pick or to attempt to keep it. So we get to see this Luka Kyrie experiment head to the playoffs. What I think is most encouraging is that the Mavericks have been playing defense. I believe it's over the last month. They've been the number 1 defensive team in the NBA. That's really encouraging given their roster. And on the other side for the Clippers, Justin and I have been in on this together that we just don't trust that team. Even when they added James Harden, arguably we trust them less after adding Mr. James Harden. So you then compact that with, we get this week news about Kawhi Leonard's knee swelling up and he's got knee pain again. Who knows if he's going to be playing? Who knows how many games he'll be playing, even if he does? So I have been out on the Clippers all season, even through that hot streak where people were dunking on people who doubted the Clippers and saying, see, we showed you, look how hot they are. We knew it would get them more regular season wins. I don't trust them in the postseason. I'm taking Dallas in 6. Justin agrees with me, co-signs on that. Dallas in 6. So quickly, in the Western Conference, we've got OKC advancing in 6 games. Justin and I are united on games and that team. I've got Denver in 5 versus the Lakers. Justin also has Denver, but in 6. Minnesota versus Phoenix. I've got Minnesota in 7. Justin has Minnesota in 6. And we both have Dallas in 6 against the Clippers. So, be interesting to see how this all plays out. Please let us know your picks, where you think we're right, where you think we're wrong in the comments. One last order of business. We had the WNBA draft earlier this week. I just want to comment on that really quickly. Some of the big highlights, Caitlin Clark, of course, did go with the first pick of the draft, as nobody was shocked by. Angel Reese was taken with the 7 pick. Another bit of news that came out with this. So there are 2 things on social media, which I would say for both myself, my own good, I should spend less time on there. I think you should too, if we're being honest. But hey, it's fun from time to time. I check it here and there. I get it. Right after the draft, of course, someone went and posted Caitlin Clark's salary over the next 4 years. And of course, there is outrage about this. And again, we get the conversation of compensation for WNBA players. I don't really understand the outrage because the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, has not changed. So I guess we can point this out. We know Caitlin Clark is going to make most of her money off of endorsements. More on that in a second. But really, what you're looking for is how these salaries change after the next CBA next year hits. Let's then see how salaries are and if this league is turning a profit. Because even with the extra buzz on the WNBA and the extra conversation about it, and then the women's college game is a bit unrelated in a way because it doesn't have to do with WNBA salaries. Even though we see this extra buzz around it of late, and the women's tournament, according to the ratings that are reported, did a great job. In many cases, as you know, higher ratings than certain men's games. The salaries, the change in that buzz and Caitlin Clark arriving to the league won't be felt for at least another year, maybe 2 years, when things go into effect under the new CBA, new TV contract. We're still in a format and a structure right now where the league has not been profitable enough on its own, or at least determined to be profitable enough on its own for those salaries to raise. So really curious to see what happens and how salaries adjust, and how things are when Caitlin Clark and these other players sign their next deal after her first deal here. So pump the brakes on that a little bit. Next point, Caitlin Clark got a shoe contract from Nike for $10 million. And this is how social media works. And this is, again, why I think a lot of things on here should be ignored. But I do want to acknowledge the reaction from this was not really congratulatory towards her and women's basketball for elevating the sport with this shoe deal. the conversation has been centered around why don't these other players have shoe contracts? I would take that question to marketing execs at Nike and any other shoe company you would like, because I'm sure players out there that are being mentioned who should have shoe deals, according to people who are upset about this, I'm sure they would offer it to them if they would think they could turn a profit. It seems like the market demand has determined that offering other players these shoe brands would not turn a profit. They could be wrong. They could be right. I don't know. I do know that there's been a ton of buzz around Caitlin Clark. Matter of fact, even on our own channel, one of our most popular shorts that we published was regarding the feud between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese last season. So there is a lot of buzz around that. And I think that's what drives the interest for these shoe deals. And it may not even have to do with players with the most accolades, the most talent, the most championships, etc. Whatever way you want to take it, look at the careers of Tim Duncan versus Kobe Bryant, players with very similar accolades and success. However, a lot more buzz and hype always around Kobe Bryant compared to Tim Duncan. Maybe fairly so, maybe unfairly so. It's up to you to decide. Give us your thoughts on the shoe contract. Are you outraged that more WNBA players or women's basketball players in general do not have shoe deals? Let me know your thoughts. Thank you guys, as always, for tuning into the show and supporting us. Always enjoy hearing your thoughts, and we will look forward to seeing you again on In the Lab with Hoopsology. Shout out to my co-host, Justin. Shout out to you all. Thanks once more. Peace out.